So this is the Front Porch Podcast, and I'm Jessica Alarcon, and I'm here with Cassandra Jennings, CEO of St. Hope. So thank you for coming and welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate having your time today. To begin, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where your history here in Sacramento and in Oak Park, and how you found yourself engaged in the neighborhood?
Sure. First of all, I always like to say that I'm just a country girl from a little town in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
With the dream that my parents had that we would have the best life and certainly do better than they did as school teachers and school administrators. And I've been living that dream ever since. So from the South and the East Coast all the way to the West, I found myself a long time ago, probably 30 years ago, to Sacramento. And Oak Park has been one of the first places that I landed. I worshiped in Oak Park for over 30 years. And I really started my career here in Sacramento in housing in Oak Park with Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. And 30 years ago, it was a redevelopment area, disinvestment, blight, and our goal was to revitalize Oak Park. And we did a number of programs through home ownership, through street cleanups, bringing parks and community centers, and assembling land so that this community could be vibrant like it once was, that people remember and love so much. And the redevelopment agency, in my experience there, sort of gave me my first entree into redevelopment in Oak Park and actually into St. Hope. So we were able to help to finance and fund 40 acres in its very infancy that became a catalyst for revitalization. So I went on doing what I was doing throughout my career, and then now I find myself as CEO of St. Hope after many years of them being really committed to their vision to revitalize Oak Park. I get a chance to join the team again and lead it in sort of, I think, the next chapter of revitalization here in Oak Park. So I'm excited to be here. I think my journey has sort of prepared me for this moment to be a beacon of hope and to continue on the success of St. Hope in Oak Park.
So you started in redevelopment. Was that something that you had intended to do or just something you fell into?
Well, and I think if you think about my career, I'm one of those ones that fell into a path and kept it.
Okay.
I actually in college studied housing, and I was an urban studies major. So it was about the people. It was about the urban environment, and it was about equity. And I'm not sure that we called it equity then, but it was about how do you really work in very dense populations where there's sometimes poverty or unequal situations for people. And so then I went on and actually started in redevelopment, moved west right after college, and so started in redevelopment actually in Oakland, California, and then moved up here. And so I've been on that journey with government and then also with the nonprofit sector, and now again with another nonprofit on that journey for redevelopment and looking at economic development, looking at housing, community development, job creation, all that makes sort of a vibrant community in urban environments.
Okay, so I'm curious. As a country girl, what was it that led you to focus your life and your career on urban development?
Well, as a country girl from a segregated South,
Okay.
I knew the disparity certainly around race. And I knew how important education was. Of course, my parents and their parents knew the importance of that as well. When I moved further north in the outskirts of Washington, D.C., what I realized is that there were still a lot of disparities, even as we started to desegregate and come out of of segregation, there was all these other things that divided, including housing and social economic status and all of that. We ended up living in the suburbs, which meant then, what's the difference between the suburbs and the urban environment? Well, a lot of different things. So it sort of intrigued me, especially when we went to college and we could find out that some schools that we could get benefit for scholarships for where we lived, and other schools like in Washington, D.C. at that time, anybody who lived in Washington, D.C. Did not get any opportunity for in-state status because all the universities were private.
Okay. Yeah, that
Now,
makes sense.
years forward, they've corrected all of that, but I was thinking about it back then and just thinking about all the inequities that existed from suburban to urban, from better income to less income to community life. So it was just sort of evident to me that I could get an impact and that this was the impact that I needed to make in this world.
Okay, thank you. That's really interesting. So as you journeyed and saw, the differences and the inequities, and certainly I think probably urban areas, it's probably a little more easy to begin to address those, would you think?
Well, I think there are plenty things in urban areas
Yeah.
and some that come with the territory. And I think there's lots of opportunities as well.
Yeah.
So you look at places like Oak Park that was once a vibrant community that took a downturn for a number of reasons because people decided to disinvest. And when you disinvest in communities, whether it's with your resources, your time, or your energy, and whether it's economic disinvestment or education or opportunities, then you can see areas decline. And you can see that more prevalently in urban areas. So with that, I think if you can work, now I'm not saying that rural areas don't have their issues either, but I think there's a whole sort of group that's also addressing that. For me, because I think I was just looking at where people were heavily populated and where changes over time happen, the thing is, how do you get that vibrancy for the people that live there and improve their situation so that they have sustainability and investment in where they are?
Yeah, so you arrived in Oak Park quite some time ago. Do you have any stories or just, what was your impression when you arrived here in this community?
Well, when I arrived, and it was 30 years ago,
Okay.
maybe a little over 30 years, again, there was blight, there was disinvestment, there were, I remember the Woodruff Hotel being a place where people would be doing drugs and prostitution and other things, and it wasn't very desirable. I remember when the redevelopment agency finally acquired, because that's what you do, is try to acquire properties and then turn them around and make them for the benefit. It was tough, and I remember that a TV station every month would meet us out there and call us slumlords and all of that, but there's processes even for people that we don't think that are doing the right thing, right? And so we had to make sure that relocation was done and people were right. And that was sort of assembling those properties from a government standpoint. So then you could do something like a St. Hope 40 acres that would turn it around. I also remember that we call it the Gray Victorian. I think some people know it as the fox trap. That the roof was like sinking in. And all we could think of was that gray, ugly Victorian. And now it's still gray, but it's beautiful. And it's sort of a landmark, I think, in my impression, as you go up Broadway into Oak Park. So I also remember when we would pick streets to do rehabilitation, and we were doing fences for people and putting in irrigation so that it would improve their properties. And I just remember that when we were doing it, the families were sitting there looking at us do it, and then the dog bit me. I was like, oh no, I can't have the dog bite me while I'm doing a whole weekend of work. And that was part of the effort that we had to do to get people to say we care and then come join us.
Got
And
it.
to look where we are now, where the community is coming in, they're taking advantage of different things, and they're taking pride in their areas. That's what we wanted. And so I have lots of stories, and I'll say the last one that I remember, because it's true, is that I used to come out here for meetings late at night, and we had community meetings. People would raise issues. We were always trying to address them, and I would drive down the street, Broadway, and at 35th and Broadway, if it was 10 o'clock at night, the light was red, and there was no other cars around, I would drive through the red light, because it wasn't a safe place for anybody to be, especially a single young woman or old woman at that time to be. And then I remember when we rehabbed it, and it was, and the Starbucks was on that corner, and I looked around, it was 10 o'clock, and I was standing outside talking to people. And that had to have been 10 or 15 years ago. And so now to look now, and the vibrancy of 35th and Broadway, and the shops on either side, and the people walking their dogs, that's what community is about. And that's what we had strived for.
Got it. So it sounds like when you were telling your stories, it took a minute to gain the trust of the neighborhood. I wonder what you think the resistance was initially.
Well, I think it was trust. I think it was also, you're coming with government. What's your intention? I think it was because maybe, why am I in this condition to start with? Because you haven't given me anything. I mean, I remember when there wasn't a grocery store, and we worked really hard to get the grocery store down at Stockton and Broadway.
Yes.
And there was a club there, but not a grocery store. I remember when Father Keith B. Kinney was built, and we said, there's really, right in the heart of Oak Park, no elementary school. We knew we had Oak Ridge, but further up, there wasn't a school. So I think that actions are better than words for a community that is skeptical, that is looking at the condition that they have, that they didn't necessarily have anything to do with, but outside forces, whether it's, again, disinvestment, different kinds of standards. And so you have to build the trust of a community. You have to listen to them, and then you have to deliver on your promises.
Okay. So you're here at St. Hope now. Can you share a little bit about what the organization does? I know you've mentioned several of the projects that this organization has supported, but for those who aren't familiar, what is it that St. Hope does?
Well, what I like about the St. Hope mission, it's fairly simple. It's to revitalize the Oak Park community through education and community economic development. And the way that St. Hope has been able to do it is, one, to be a catalyst in economic development. So I mentioned 40 acres, which is right there at 35th and Broadway. And what you have is you have businesses, you have some housing, and then you have opportunities for employment through the businesses. You have businesses that have started up here in Oak Park and then are thriving and serving the community. And then we have underground books, which is really like a cultural sort of opportunity for books and learnings and sharing and a place of gathering. And employment, because we employ people from the high school as well as the community. And then you have the Guild Theater, which is a historic theater that not only can we bring entertainment and meeting space and opportunities for the community, but you can then begin to sort of explore the richness of a community and of a culture and of a people, and many different kinds of people. So that 40 acres was sort of a catalyst. We finally got a restaurant, which was Fixings, which was a game changer.
Yeah.
It was in the original plan to have a restaurant. Took them a few years to get there. But it's a great place for people to get good food, to do gatherings and to bring vibrancy to the community. And then I guess I have to mention the coffee place where Old Soul, where it was Starbucks at once as well, where is when people want to meet. So it's a good gathering place, and people from the community, bringing people outside the community, and people outside the community come and meet and feel the richness of the community. And then, of course, the barbershop is serving. I think that part of St. Hope is really to support sustainability, that people who grew up in this community, love this community, minority businesses can start there and can thrive and then teach others. So that's why the employment side is so good. So not only are you trying to build wealth or sustainability in families, you're also teaching them a culture that hopefully will build wealth within them. And the housing, I know we just have 12 units, but those are 12 units that are still important and important to our community as we build more housing around. And I think we do need to look at more housing for sort of the working people that can then be a jump start to homeownership. So St. Hope, certainly on the community economic development side, and we also have buildings and opportunities to bring other people into the community. And these are service organizations that are designed to bring more services and obviously employment opportunities. But on the education side, which the economic development side was more involved, but the education side started off as an after-school program and now has gone to a whole K through 12 program, which includes a elementary school, PS7 elementary school, PS7 middle school, and then Sakai High School. And the importance of education is really sort of, it becomes the springing board for economic and stability for families. And so that's the long game that you're saying, not only am I going to come and bring businesses and jobs, but we're going to help people build an educational base. So one, they can go to college. I mean, 95% plus of the graduates are accepted to four-year universities and colleges. We want to enrich that experience by bringing in the entrepreneurial and partnering with others, and then they go on to do great things. So education becomes key. Community economic development, and then I'm going to add one in community economic development is about housing, which is always tough in neighborhoods when you're trying to revitalize. But I think that is a part of the opportunity to really sustain a community and to support people within the community as well.
You know, I know housing has been an issue in the neighborhood. I'm lucky because I couldn't afford housing in the neighborhood now if I had to start from scratch, and I am doing fine. But, you know, I know that many neighbors are concerned about, you know, how am I going to keep living here? You know, how am I going to stay here? What are your thoughts about what is needed and what can be done within the community related to housing?
Right. And I think it's not only in Oak Park. Certainly Oak Park is starting to join the rest of the city and the state and maybe the nation, that's a growing problem. Yeah. So it's always a supply and demand, and then it's about affordability. And having started in housing, at first I was doing a lot of financing for affordable housing, multifamily units. We don't really have the space in Oak Park to build those, but at some point I think it might be good to look at that. I'm trying to see where is the gap. And there is multifamily, affordable housing. You're able to sort of keep the rents affordable. So that working people can afford to stay and live here. And that affordability usually goes, if you build the type that we used to build, it goes through 55 years, so you can keep that affordability there. And the importance, I think, of that is to keep people in the community while you're still, that's not where you stop. That's where you rest for a minute, right? Okay. And you're comfortable. And then I think, again, the game changer is really going to be home ownership. And so how do you do that? And what we need to do is change the narrative in our communities.
How so?
The narrative should be is you too can buy a house. And you might not be able to buy it today, or you might not be able to buy it on the corner or exactly where you want it to be, but you can buy a house somewhere, and then you grow upon that to build that wealth to get to the next stepping stone. And I think, when we were coming up, we did our first-time home buyer program, and they still have first-time home buyer programs, and you got to buy where your money is and where you can afford. But that's not where you need to stay. You build equity in it, you take care of your place, and then you buy the next place. And so if we can have affordability first on the rental level, that's reasonable, and then really work with people to save, to plan, to look at the market and get in where you can. And then, especially the market, what it's showing now is that investments matter. Now, it doesn't always work that way, so it's a long-term game. But I think if we're able to do that, then we can have, if people aren't ready, we can have a pipeline for them to get ready. And those who are ready, we should encourage them to buy and to buy now. And I get sometimes it's choices for people. My thing is you never want to push somebody out, but if you have a choice to stay or to leave, then it's your choice. I think the challenge becomes is when you price people out, but unless you own or have something that's affordable, you're always subject to being priced out.
Absolutely.
And so it's how do we provide options, but keep trying to through education, through support, through opportunities. There's lots of programs to show people how to move through the pipeline of housing.
Okay.
And sometimes people can jump steps. Sometimes people have to start from the very bottom. But the thing is, it's sort of continuum, and it's sort of stepping rather than saying, once I get in, I got to stay here. Or when I get in, I got to be where I want to be forever.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of, I think, in Oak Park, an opportunity for us to see how many we can really move to homeownership. And then for those who can't, how we can give them some stabilized sort of middle range rental options that then they can use that as a jumping platform to homeownership. And then you do have your very low housing here. I mean, we do have some public housing. Obviously, there's Section 8 that can help people live many places. So on that continuum, let's focus on all of them.
A combination of financial education and teaching people how to work within the system.
Right. And specifically homeownership education.
Yes.
And I think it's a subset of financial education, but it's really targeted and focused on what I say many of us will be our only way or certainly our first way to participate in economic development. Other people can start businesses, they can be an entrepreneur, they can do all kinds of things. But many of us and more of us can start and may just be there being a homeowner.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Buying a home that you take care of and take pride in, having a community of people like that definitely contributes toward the stability of a community.
It does, and it builds wealth. I mean,
and it builds,
you make money. I tell the average person, and I look in the mirror too. If you invest, and I get it's you got to stay in it for the long term. You probably can't save that much money annually that you can make on a house. And I look at some people even today. I'm like, you live in Oak Park? You bought 10 years ago? You got to see the vision. And for Oak Park, we have Oak Park, North Oak Park that's taken off. I saw some houses for sale over there. But South Oak Park is still a jewel that we need to look at, that we have an opportunity for people who are there now to help them stay in their places if they choose to figure out how they can buy. And sometimes that means you need to get a job, you need to get a better job, need to get an education, or you just need to save some money, or you just need to make the decision that you're going to do it. And this is where you're going to do it.
Yeah.
So, and you got to do that through sometimes trusted partners. So for you and I to talk about it, that's good. But then if we're able to use the church or a community group or a fraternity, a sorority or neighborhood, to really help share the messaging, then I think we can be influential in moving the needle.
Okay. So in terms of affordable rental housing, because that seems to be the challenge that everyone's discussing, so that people can begin to get themselves established. I couldn't even imagine trying to find a rental place right now. What do you think? Because it seems that that's been a long, ongoing conversation, and there doesn't seem to be an excessive movement. What do you think is necessary to make that something that's more broadly available?
Well, it's a supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
So the supply, we need to build more housing. And in Oak Park, I've been around. We have our elementary school is down on Martin Luther King, close to Fruit Ridge.
Okay.
It's Strawberry Lane. That's a little further back, and there is a vacant parcel there. And I've been thinking about how many units could you put on there, and there's lots of programs for tax credits and bond issues to keep it affordable. I think it's very difficult to do affordable rentals in many single-family homes. So what we need is enough space that we can build affordable multi-unit structures for rental. I think back in I'm dating myself, I guess in the 80s, we did like 10,000 units across Sacramento area that had affordability components in many of it. We need to get back to some of that keeps those units affordable. They have regulatory agreements, and they're affordable to working people. And that way, that will give an opportunity for people to have some stability in that level. Oak Park doesn't have a whole lot of land, so it'll be a little more complicated. But if we look at it as a whole within our city, and then within the county, and much less the region, we need to figure out where still we can build those affordable units, mixed use, market rate, and affordability, where people can have access to good services as well as affordable housing.
Okay.
So I know there's pent-up demand, and I think there are dollars. I think we need to streamline processes. We need to move it forward because it's definitely a supply issue right now.
Yeah. I know the city has loosened regulations around building secondary units. I don't know what there is out there, not being someone who's going to invest myself in a multi-unit thing, if they've done likewise with multi-unit housing.
There's some huge developments downtown. If you just drive down 12th, I guess, coming in and 16th.
Okay.
There's some multifamily units. I don't know them all. I know we built a lot in the South area back in the day, in the Pocket and Greenhaven area. There's lots in the Thomas. And there's some in Richards Boulevard. I'm sure with the rail yards being developed, there has to be there is affordable housing component there. And throughout, and I would think wherever there's a good piece of land, and there's some mixed-use developments that work for communities better. So I would say that would be a great start to increasing the supply and still supporting neighborhoods.
So kind of a final question. What is it you think that is most exciting about being in Oak Park right now, working especially in the service industry and engaging with the neighborhood?
Well, for me, for St. Hope, I think first of all is I need to bring more community to it in partnerships. We have a K through 12 system that academically is sound, and I would love to have the community get more engaged and involved in the success and the next level of opportunities for those students as well as for our community. On the community economic development side, let's keep the richness of our community while continuing to empower people that are from Oak Park and that live here. It doesn't have to be a continuous divide. It has to be all of us together. And so we need to embrace each other and help to lift us up. So I think part of St. Hope's opportunity would be to lift up the whole community and to keep lifting them up. I think, lastly, I'll say I just look for opportunities. I look for opportunities to support Oak Park. It's come a long way, but it's not done yet. And I look at, as we look at, and I don't know, we called it all Oak Park, but if you look at the north side, it's doing probably pretty good for a lot of people. Central is okay, and South Oak Park. Let's focus on the areas that we can really support people in those areas while bringing them up at the same time. So I'm excited about what we might be able to do in partnership in South Oak Park, whether it's on Fruit Ridge, near Martin Luther King, near Fruit Ridge. We are building a new elementary school. Hopefully we'll break ground next summer. But we are well on the way and so deserving, and that will be in South Oak Park. And then we are always looking for improvements in our physical presence throughout the community. We set the bar high. I think everybody sets the bar high, and when we achieve those high bars, everybody wins.
Thank you so much. This has been an enjoyable conversation. I really appreciate your time and sharing with us your history and about St. Hope.
Thank you. Thank you.